Welcome to Creepytalks. Story 1. The Room Behind the Wall. Oliver Morgan shifted uneasily in the massive Victorian mansion he had inherited after his grandfather's death. The mansion stood alone on the cold coastline of Northumberland, England, a towering ancient structure that groaned with every gust of sea wind. He had only lived here for a few months when the first scratching began. It always came at 2:17 a.m. Never earlier, never later. A slow scrape, scrape, scrape on the west wing wall, like nails dragging across stone. Oliver assumed it was rats, but rats didn't whisper his name, and by the third night, the scratching evolved into knocking. 3 slow taps. Tock, 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 almost polite, almost human. The west wing was the oldest part of the mansion, built long before the rest of the house. Sealed off for decades, Oliver remembered his grandfather's warning when he was younger. Don't go near the west wing at night. Some doors stay sealed for a reason. Oliver never believed in such things until the wall whispered, "Oliver, let me out." He froze in his bed. The voice was faint, muffled, but unmistakably real. Fear crawled under his skin. He grabbed his phone, stepped into the dim corridor, and followed the whispers. The west wing felt colder than the rest of the house, as though the walls drank the warmth from the air. The whisper came again. "Let me out." Oliver reached the wall. That night something new appeared, a thin glowing crack running down the plaster. He touched it. The wall was warm. Then it moved. The crack widened. Something inside was breathing. Oliver stumbled back in horror. Suddenly, his phone flashlight flickered violently, and a skeletal hand, long, bony, impossible, slipped through the crack for a split second before jerking back inside. Oliver sprinted to his room and locked the door. He didn't sleep the rest of the night, but he made a terrible mistake the next day. He started digging through his grandfather's old belongings. In a dusty wooden trunk in the attic, he found ancient property blueprints, old photographs of the mansion, a thin black diary, and a sealed envelope with his grandfather's handwriting. "Do not open the west wing." Oliver ignored the warning. He unrolled the mansion's blueprints. His stomach twisted. According to the blueprint, the west wing wall wasn't a wall. It was a sealed room, a windowless, doorless room that should not exist. His hands shook as he opened the black diary. His grandfather's writing filled the page's entry. 1964. "We heard crying from the soil when we built this wing. The workers begged me to stop." Entry 1964. "Something took a worker inside the bricks. His scream still echoes in my ears." Entry 1964. "We sealed the room. Whatever is inside cannot be allowed out." The final entry sent ice down Oliver's spine. "If the wall cracks, run." That night he didn't run. He listened. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the wall began to breathe again. But this time, Oliver walked toward it. The crack had widened further. Dust fell like dead skin. The breathing was louder, hurried, desperate. Suddenly, thump! A loud bang from inside. The plaster bulged outward, the shape of a face pressing against it from the other side. Its eyes shifted beneath the wall, looking directly at Oliver. His blood froze. The face in the wall opened its mouth in a silent scream. Then, crack! A hand burst through the wall, grabbing Oliver's wrist with impossible strength. It felt like frozen bone. He screamed and pulled, but the grip only tightened, dragging him toward the wall, as if trying to pull him inside. A sickening voice hissed from within, "Let me out, or come in with me." In panic, Oliver grabbed a shard of wood from the broken wall and smashed the skeletal wrist. The hand recoiled, shrieking with a sound that didn't belong in this world. The wall began to collapse outward, breathing heavier, shaking violently. The mansion trembled, windows cracked, lights flickered, and then it appeared, a creature, tall, thin, starved, forced its way out of the crack. Its limbs were wrong, its bones bent at angles that defied nature. Its face was the same distorted face that had pushed through the plaster. Its mouth stretched into a smile that nearly ripped its skin. Its eyes were bottomless pits. It whispered, "Oliver, you freed me." Oliver stumbled backwards as the creature stepped into the corridor. Its movements were jerky, unnatural, almost insect-like. Its long fingers grazed the walls, leaving black marks. He ran, but the creature wasn't walking anymore. It glided, silent, smooth, predatory. Oliver reached the staircase. Before he could descend, something cold brushed his neck. The creature had appeared behind him, impossibly fast. He jumped down the stairs, crashing painfully onto the floor below. The creature leaned over the railing, head twisting upside down to stare at him. It whispered, voice cracking with hunger, "You shouldn't have opened the wall." Oliver ran toward the front door, the only hope of escape. But the mansion betrayed him. Doors slammed on their own, windows locked, hallways shifted, stretching unnaturally like a maze. The house was alive. His grandfather was right. The wall hadn't contained the creature. The creature had contained the house. Oliver sprinted up to the attic, the only place with a window large enough to escape through behind him. The creature followed, dragging its limbs across the floor with horrifying calm. When Oliver reached the attic, he barricaded the door and grabbed the diary. He frantically flipped pages. There was no way to kill the creature. No ritual, no escape. Only one horrifying sentence. If you open the wall, the house becomes its body. As Oliver read the words, the attic floor shifted beneath him, rising and falling like a living chest, breathing. He turned toward the door. It was no longer a door. It was a gaping, fleshy opening, like a mouth. The creature stepped through it, smiling. Its shadow engulfed him. It whispered in a voice colder than death, "You live inside me now." The attic lights went out. Oliver's scream echoed through the mansion, and then nothing. The west wing wall sealed itself again. The house returned to silence until the next heir arrived. And at exactly 2:17 a.m., the scratching began once more. Story 2. The Last Passenger of Hawkins' Train. The night train to Hawkins Village was almost empty. Only 4 dim lights flickered in the quiet passenger coach. Cold air seeped in through the cracked windows. The forest outside was pitch black, as if the world beyond the glass had been swallowed by something alive. Adrian Blake, a 29-year-old journalist from Bristol, sat alone with his backpack and camera. He was on his way to investigate a rumor. The old Hawkins line had been shut down for years after several disappearances. Yet tonight, for reasons nobody understood, the train had started running again. Adrian was the only passenger. The train rattled forward with a metallic groan. The lights flickered rhythmically. The only sound was the clacking of wheels on old steel tracks. At least, that's what he thought. 30 minutes into the journey, he heard footsteps. Slow, dragging, like someone walking barefoot down the aisle. Adrian turned. No one was there. He swallowed hard and leaned back. "It's just nerves," he whispered. But the footsteps came again, this time closer. And then he saw it, a shadow at the far end of the coach, tall, thin, unmoving. Adrian squinted. "Hello? Are you a passenger?" The shadow didn't respond. It simply stood there, swaying slightly, as though breathing. A cold chill crawled up Adrian's spine. He stood slowly from his seat. "Sir, are you all right?" He took one step forward. The shadow took one step backward, as if mocking him. Adrian reached for his flashlight and shone it toward the figure. There was no one, just an empty aisle. He exhaled shakily, but as he sat back down, every hair on his body stood on end. Someone was breathing behind him. He froze. A slow exhale. Warm, wet, unmistakably human. Adrian turned in one swift motion. No one was there. The seat behind him was empty, but the smell of rotting earth lingered in the air. He stood up again. Something was very wrong. The train slowed suddenly, screeching metal echoing through the coach. When it stopped, Adrian looked out the window. They were still in the middle of the forest. No station, no lights, nothing, just endless trees. He tapped the glass nervously. Then he saw movement between the trees. A pale figure running parallel to the train. Fast. Too fast to be human. Adrian stumbled back from the window, heart pounding. The train shuddered violently as if something had slammed into the side. And then the lights went out. Blackness swallowed the coach. Adrian fumbled for his phone. No signal, no light, only darkness. Then he heard it. Footsteps. Inside the train, soft, barefoot, slow, coming straight toward him. Adrian backed up until he hit the wall. Something in the dark breathed inches from his face. A dry whisper followed. "You're the last one left." Adrian's heart thundered. "What? Who's there?" The voice whispered again. "You shouldn't have boarded this train." He could feel cold fingers brushing his neck, but when he swung wildly with his flashlight, the coach was empty. The train lights flickered back on, and Adrian froze. A woman now sat across from him. She hadn't been there moments ago. Her dress was tattered, soaked with mud. Her long black hair hung over her face. Her arms were unnaturally thin. The skin stretched tight like parchment. "Ma'am," Adrian whispered. The woman didn't move. Her head hung downward, hair covering her features. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" The woman raised her head. Slowly, and Adrian's stomach turned. Her eyes were gone, just empty, black sockets. Her mouth stretched unnaturally wide, ripping at the corners until her cheeks began to bleed. In a voice that sounded like bones scraping glass, she whispered, "You shouldn't have taken this train." Adrian stumbled backward, falling over the seat. The woman stood. Her neck cracked loudly as her head cocked to one side. Suddenly, the train lurched forward with violent speed. Too fast, dangerously fast. The windows rattled. The metal screamed. The forest became a blur. Adrian grabbed onto a pole, terrified it might derail. The woman tilted her head again, studying him with her hollow eyes. Her voice came out in a chorus of whispers, as if dozens of voices spoke through her. "We all boarded once. We all thought we'd reach Hawkins Village, but Hawkins Village never comes." Adrian backed away slowly. "What do you mean?" A smile tore across her face, too wide to be human. "This train doesn't take you to a place. It takes you to something." The coach lights crackled again. The aisle grew darker, as if consumed by shadows. A shape moved far behind the woman, crawling on the ceiling like a giant spider. Adrian clasped his mouth to keep from screaming. The woman snapped her head toward the creature. Her voice dropped to a demonic whisper. "They're here. They smell you." Adrian bolted toward the next coach. He slammed the connecting door behind him and found himself staring at something impossible. The next coach was filled entirely with passengers, dozens of them, all sitting silently, all wearing clothes from different decades: 1940s uniforms, 1950s dresses, 1970s jackets. Their skin was pale gray. Their eyes were hollow. They sat perfectly still, like mannequins. Adrian stepped closer, trembling. "Hello? Can any of you hear me?" None moved. Then a tiny sound escaped from the back row. A whisper, barely audible. "Run!" Adrian froze. The whisper came again. "They're not passengers anymore. Run!" Suddenly, every single passenger turned their head toward him in perfect unison all at once, their necks cracking in sickening harmony. Dozens of hollow eyes stared at him. Then their mouths opened, wider, wider, splitting their cheeks, their jaws dangling. A deep, guttural moan filled the coach. Adrian stumbled backward, slamming the door shut. The train jolted violently, nearly throwing him off his feet. He sprinted to the front coach, the operator's cabin. He pounded on the door. "Stop the train, please!" No answer. He pushed the door open and screamed. The operator was dead. His face was frozen in terror. His eyes were missing. His hands clenched the controls. The train was moving faster than any train should. The speed gauge maxed out, vibrating. Adrian tried pulling the emergency brake. It didn't work. He hit every switch, every lever. Nothing. Then the dead operator's head turned slowly toward him. Adrian stumbled back. The corpse whispered, "It's too late to get off." The train screeched as it entered a pitch-black mountain tunnel. Total darkness swallowed the windows. Adrian ran back into the passenger coach and stopped dead. They were all there. The hollow-eyed passengers, the crawling creature, the eyeless woman, the shadows, all staring at him. The woman stepped forward. Her voice echoed from everywhere at once. "You're the last passenger now, and the train must feed." The caretaker creature dropped from the ceiling, long limbs, cracked bones, skull twisted in several directions. It crawled toward him with terrifying speed. Adrian ran, but the aisle stretched unnaturally, the coach elongating endlessly. He couldn't reach the door. He couldn't escape. He screamed as cold hands grabbed his arms, his legs, his face, and the woman whispered one final time, "Hawkins' train takes passengers. It never returns them." The train burst out of the tunnel. Empty, silent, it slowed by itself, came to a gentle stop in the middle of the forest, just like before. The doors opened. A thick fog rolled inside. The train waited for its next passenger at exactly 2:17 a.m. Story 3. The House That Follows You. Evelyn Rose Lockhart was not the type to believe in curses or haunted places. She was a 27-year-old architect from Denmark, practical and skeptical by nature. But everything changed the day she discovered the small, abandoned house on the outskirts of Marwick, Scotland. She wasn't looking for it. It found her. Evelyn had been driving through mist-covered roads, inspecting potential renovation sites for her firm. The fog grew thicker, swallowing the trees and hiding the path. When she realized she was lost, she slowed down. That's when she saw it. A small, crooked house hidden between dead trees, not on any map, not visible from the main road. Yet somehow, waiting. Its wooden frame was warped. Its roof sagged like something inside was too heavy. The windows were black, as if the house had no interior at all. And yet, Evelyn felt something watching her from behind the glass. She told herself it was just her imagination, but curiosity pulled her out of the car. The air around the house was unnaturally cold, the grass dead, the soil blackened. Evelyn took a step forward, and the front door opened, on its own, just an inch. just enough to invite her in. "Hello," Evelyn called out. Her voice felt small, swallowed by the silence. No answer. She pushed the door open completely. The house was empty. A single room with wooden floors, a small window, and a staircase leading nowhere. It felt wrong, like the inside was larger than the outside. She walked slowly, feeling the floor creak beneath her. There was a picture frame on the wall, dusty, crooked, old. She wiped the glass with her sleeve, and her blood ran cold. The picture showed the same house she was standing in, but in the picture, someone was standing in the doorway, a tall man with no face. Evelyn jerked back, her heart slammed in her chest. She turned toward the doorway. It was empty. She forced a laugh. "Okay, enough. I'm leaving." When she stepped outside, the door slammed behind her with a violent bang. She didn't look back. She got in her car. She drove away. But 10 minutes later, the fog thickened again, and she saw it, the same house, the same dead trees standing in front of her. Her heart stopped. How is it here again? She drove past it as fast as she could. Another 10 minutes. The fog shifted. The house appeared again, closer, as if it had moved. Evelyn's breath trembled. "No, this is impossible." She sped up, desperate to get away. She didn't look at her rearview mirror, but she heard something behind her. Footsteps, not human footsteps, heavy ones, like something huge was walking slowly, steadily, following her car. She reached the main road at last. Streetlights, civilization, safety. She exhaled in relief and drove home. But that night, Evelyn had the first nightmare. She dreamed she was inside the house, standing in the doorway, and the faceless man from the picture was standing behind her. His fingers long, cold, resting on her shoulders, he whispered, "You opened my door. Now I open yours." Evelyn woke screaming, drenched in sweat. She ran to her living room to splash her face with water. Instead, she froze. Her front door, which she had locked, was standing wide open. A cold breeze drifted inside, and there on the floor was dirt, black dirt, the same kind that surrounded the house. Evelyn's hands shook violently. She grabbed her phone and called her friend Noah Bennett, a photographer from Germany. "Noah, please come. Something's wrong." She didn't tell him about the house. Not yet. He arrived within an hour. They checked the entire house. Nothing. Everything was normal. Noah tried to calm her. "It was probably the wind. You're stressed. You said you saw something strange while driving." Evelyn didn't answer. She couldn't, because right behind Noah, outside the window, she saw it, the house, standing across the street, watching. "Noah, get away from the window." He turned confused. "What?" "Evelyn, there's nothing." But she had already backed away, trembling. Noah stared outside. "It's just a normal night. There's nothing." The street lamp flickered, and for a split second, he saw it too. The crooked roof, the dark windows, the dead ground beneath it, and a tall, faceless man standing in the open doorway. Noah stumbled back, eyes wide. "What the hell was that?" Evelyn grabbed his arm. "It followed me." Noah was shaking. "Houses don't move, Evelyn." "This one does." They watched the window for several minutes. When the light flickered again, the house was gone. Noah tried to convince her to stay with him for the night. She agreed. They left her house and drove to his apartment. It was quiet there, warm, safe. For the first time, Evelyn started to relax. But around 3 a.m., Noah nudged her awake. "Evelyn, listen." There was a sound, at first faint, barely audible, then louder. Wood creaking, like floorboards. Footsteps from upstairs. But Noah lived on the top floor. There was no upstairs. They looked at each other. The footsteps grew heavier, slow, deliberate, dragging. Then, a loud knock from the ceiling. Evelyn whispered, voice breaking, "It found me again." Noah grabbed his camera and flashlight. "Stay here, don't move." He climbed onto a chair and pushed open the attic hatch. His flashlight barely cut through the darkness. "Noah, don't!" Evelyn begged. He lifted the flashlight higher and froze. The attic was not an attic anymore. It was a room, wooden floors, black windows, a crooked frame on the wall. It was the interior of the house. The house had grown into Noah's apartment. "Noah, come down!" Evelyn screamed. But it was too late. The faceless man appeared behind Noah, long fingers stretching toward him. Noah's flashlight fell. His scream was cut short, silenced. Evelyn didn't breathe. Then a hand, pale, long, wrong, reached down from the attic opening. Reaching for her, Evelyn ran. She fled down the stairs, sprinting into the night. She didn't stop until she reached an abandoned bus stop miles away. Her clothes soaked with sweat, her lungs burning, her mind shattering. She stayed there until sunrise. When she finally looked up, her heart died. The house stood across the road, closer than before, waiting. The front door slowly creaked open, inviting her. Evelyn dropped to her knees, sobbing hysterically. "Please, leave me alone." A whisper crawled across the wind, deep, cold, hungry. "You entered my house. Now my house enters you." The ground beneath her trembled. Cracks spread across the asphalt, forming outlines. Outlines of walls, doors, a roof. The house was spreading, growing beneath her feet. The world around her twisted. The sky darkened, and Evelyn felt herself falling, not into a hole, into a room. The same room from the picture. She landed on cold wooden floorboards. She tried to stand, but the faceless man stood right behind her. His presence crushed the air. His voice entered her mind like a blade. "My house will follow you until you become part of it." Her scream echoed through the wooden walls, until it became part of them, forever. The house vanished from the road, ready to follow someone else, someone who dared to open its door. Story 4. The Voice Under the Bed. Mason Doyle, a 31-year-old paramedic from Manchester, had seen enough death and tragedy to make most people crumble. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared him for what happened the night he moved into his new apartment in Oslo, Norway. It was a simple place, small, quiet, perfect for a fresh start. After a long day of unpacking, Mason crawled into bed exhausted. Around 1:40 a.m., he finally drifted into sleep. Then at exactly 2:17 a.m., he woke up. Not suddenly, not violently, just awake. The room was silent, too silent, the kind of silence that feels like a held breath. He blinked groggily and rolled onto his side. Then he heard it, a voice, soft, whispering, and it was coming from under his bed. "Mason, are you awake?" His blood froze instantly. He jerked up, heart hammering violently. Who said that? He stared at the dark space beneath his bed. Nothing but a black void. He grabbed his phone, turning on the flashlight. "Mason," the voice whispered again. "Come down here." He nearly dropped his phone. There was someone or something under his bed. He forced himself to speak, though his voice trembled. "Who's under there?" Silence. Then a crackling laugh, low, rasping, wrong. Mason scrambled backward, stumbling off the bed and pressing against the far wall. He pointed the flashlight at the floor. Nothing, empty, just darkness. He exhaled shakily. "I'm losing my mind." But he wasn't. The whisper came again. now right beside his ear. "Don't ignore me!" Mason screamed and swung wildly. But there was no one. He backed into the corner, shaking. His paramedic training told him to stay calm. His instincts told him to run. His body wouldn't move. Minutes passed. The whisper went silent. Eventually, Mason climbed back onto the bed, this time with his feet pulled tightly under him. He waited. No sound. Finally, exhaustion dragged him into sleep. But the nightmare that followed was worse than reality. He dreamed of a man, painfully thin, pale, crawling under a bed in a pitch-black room. The man whispered his name over and over in a voice like broken glass. "Mason, Mason, Mason." The man turned his head in the dream. He had no eyes, only a stretched, hollow mouth. The whisper crawled out, "I am under your bed." Mason shot awake, drenched in sweat. He looked over the edge of the bed and saw a hand. A long, bony, gray hand slowly pulling back under the frame, as if it sensed he was watching. Mason screamed and jumped off the bed, racing out of the bedroom. He slammed the door shut behind him. His breathing was ragged. He grabbed his phone, dialed his colleague and closest friend, Lucas Reed from Ireland. "Lucas, you have to come. There's someone in my apartment." Lucas arrived within 20 minutes, banging on the door. Mason let him in, shaking violently. "What happened? Are you hurt?" Lucas asked. "There's someone under my bed," Mason rasped. "It spoke to me." Lucas frowned. "Look, you've been stressed since the move. Maybe you heard a neighbor or a dream or—" "No," Mason snapped. "It said my name. It laughed. I saw its hand." Lucas sighed and walked into the bedroom. "I'll check." "Don't." Mason tried to stop him, but Lucas was already kneeling. He lifted the sheet hanging off the bed. His flashlight illuminated only empty space. Lucas exhaled. "See? There's nothing." Then the whisper came, soft, cold, from directly beneath the bed. "Hello, Lucas." Lucas froze. The color drained from his face. He looked at Mason. "You heard that, right?" Before Mason could answer, a hand shot out from under the bed, grabbing Lucas by the ankle and dragging him violently toward the darkness beneath the frame. Lucas screamed as his body slammed onto the floor. "Help! Mason! Help!" Mason grabbed Lucas's arms and pulled with every ounce of strength. Something beneath the bed was pulling harder. Much harder. Lucas's nails scraped the floor as he screamed in animalistic terror. "Mason! It's pulling me in! Please!" Mason pulled. Sweat poured down his face. He screamed, muscles burning. Then abruptly, the force stopped. Lucas lay trembling on the floor, gasping for breath. The whisper came again, deeper, hungry. "Two? I have two now." The bedroom door slammed shut with immense force. Throwing both men backward, Mason grabbed Lucas's arm. "We're leaving now." They raced toward the front door. Locked. Mason had not locked it. They tried the window stuck. They shoved, slammed, kicked. Nothing opened. The apartment felt alive, as if the walls were sealing them in. "Mason," Lucas whispered, voice breaking. "What is this place?" Before he could answer, lights flickered. The whisper traveled across the room like a crawling shadow. "Come back to bed, Mason." And then from beneath the couch, "Lucas, come hide with me." They both backed into the kitchen. Lucas covered his ears. "Make it stop. Please make it stop." A low scraping sound began, like fingernails dragging across wood. Slow, deliberate. It moved along the floor, toward them. Mason grabbed a kitchen knife. Suddenly the lights shut off. Darkness swallowed everything. The scraping grew louder, closer. Then the voice whispered between them, inches away. "You don't need the light to see me." Lucas sobbed. Mason whispered, "Please." What do you want?" There was a long moment of silence. Then, "Company." A cold hand brushed Mason's ankle. He screamed and jumped back. Lucas tripped over a chair, falling to the floor. Suddenly, the darkness beneath Lucas seemed to open, like a black hole in impossible void. Hands, dozens of them, pale and bony, shot out and clamped onto Lucas's arms, legs, and face. Lucas screamed a blood-curdling scream. "Mason! Help me! Please! Mason!" Mason lunged forward to grab him, but Lucas was sucked beneath the floor in a split second. Gone. Silence. Only one whisper remained. "One I have one now." Mason collapsed to his knees, trembling violently. He sobbed into his hands. Then the whisper grew louder, circling him. "Come under the bed, Mason. I saved a place for you." The bedroom door creaked open slowly. The bed waited inside, darkness pouring from beneath it. Mason backed away, shaking uncontrollably. "No, no, please." The whisper filled the entire apartment. "Come, down, here." And then, a face appeared from beneath the bed, upside down, pale, mouth stretched open, eyes black as tar, smiling. "Sleep under here forever." Mason ran at full speed, crashing through the locked door with sheer terror-fueled strength. He sprinted barefoot into the cold night and didn't stop until he reached a police station. He begged for help. Police searched the apartment they found. No intruder, no hole under the bed, no trace of Lucas, no sign anything had ever happened, no voice, no creature, just an empty apartment, but the underside of Mason's bed was warm, as if something had just crawled back inside. Mason refused to return. He never went back for his belongings. He moved to another country. But every night at 2:17 a.m., no matter where he sleeps, a whisper comes from beneath his bed. "Mason, I'm still here." Story 5. The Lantern Man of Blackwood Forest. Elena Markovic, a wildlife researcher from Serbia, had survived storms, wolves, and weeks alone in the wilderness. She believed nothing in a forest could scare her. Blackwood Forest in northern Canada proved her wrong on the very first night. She came to study the behavior of nocturnal animals for her research team in Toronto. Blackwood was remote, silent, and nearly untouched by humans. Exactly what she needed. She set up camp near a frozen lake. Her tent zipped safely, her equipment stored, her fire crackling warmly. At midnight, she sat outside writing in her journal. That's when she saw it, a faint light between the trees, a lantern, swinging slowly, back and forth, back and forth. It was too far to see who held it. Her breath caught. There should be no one else out here. She reached for her binoculars. Through the lens, she saw a tall, thin figure. So thin it looked barely human. The figure stopped walking and pointed the lantern directly at her. The flame inside flickered into a long, unnatural shape, almost like a mouth opening. Elena lowered the binoculars instantly. Her heartbeat thundered when she raised them again. The lantern man was gone, completely vanished. No light, no footsteps, not even the sound of branches moving. The forest was dead silent, Elena whispered to herself. Just a hunter, or someone hiking. But deep inside, she knew that wasn't true. She went into the tent and tried to sleep. At 2:53 a.m., her eyes snapped open. There was a sound, a slow, dragging sound. Shh, shh, shh. Footsteps. Someone walking just outside the tent. Elena grabbed her hunting knife and flashlight, her hands shaking as she turned the light on. Then came a knock on the tent wall. Soft, gentle tap, tap, tap. "Hello?" Elena called, voice trembling. No response, only breathing. Long, heavy breathing on the other side of the fabric. Suddenly, fingers pressed against the thin tent wall. 10 long, bony fingers stretching the fabric inward. Elena stumbled backward and kicked her equipment bag. The fingers traced along the wall, slowly, searching. Then a voice, deep and cold, whispered, "I have been looking for someone like you." Elena's heart slammed in her chest. In a panic, she grabbed her flare gun, unzipped the tent, and fired into the darkness. The flare streaked across the forest, lighting the trees in bright red. But there was no one. The forest was empty. No footprints, no lantern, no man. Elena decided she was leaving at dawn, but dawn never seemed to come. She checked her watch at 6:10 a.m. Still pitch black outside. 7:45, still dark. 9:13, still night. The sky did not change. Her compass didn't move. Her GPS blinked error codes. She tried her satellite phone. Dead. She felt a chill creep up her spine. Something was wrong with the forest. At 10:02 a.m., according to her watch, a sound echoed. A lantern lighting, a flame sparking to life. Elena froze. The light was back closer now, inside the trees, approaching in slow gliding movements. She saw the figure again, tall, thin, arms too long. The lantern dangled from its hand, swaying rhythmically back and forth. Back and forth. Elena whispered, "Stay away from me." The figure tilted its head, an unnatural angle, almost upside down, as if listening. Then it started humming, a low, tuneless hum, the same rhythm as the lantern swinging. Elena grabbed her backpack and bolted toward the forest path, tripping over roots, sprinting blindly. The humming grew louder behind her, faster, hungrier. She ran until her lungs burned. She didn't stop until the path ended abruptly at a cliff overlooking a frozen river. Her breath caught in her throat. Behind her, the humming stopped. She slowly turned. The lantern man stood less than 20 meters away. She now saw him clearly, a pale face stretched too long, hollow eyes that glowed faintly, a jaw that hung open as if unhinged, clothes rotted as if he died wearing them, and a lantern burning with a black flame. He lifted his free hand, unnaturally long fingers bending backwards like broken twigs. "Stay back," Elena whispered. The lantern man tilted his head and spoke. "You followed my light, so now I follow you." Elena threw a rock at him. It passed straight through his body. He did not move. He did not blink. He only whispered, "Run." The trees behind him snapped and twisted violently, like something large was moving through them. Elena turned and slid down the snowy cliff toward the frozen river. Her backpack hit the ice. She followed, landing hard and gasping in pain, but she got up and ran across the ice. The humming returned, echoing across the trees. The lantern man walked along the cliff edge, watching. He didn't need to run. He didn't need to chase. He just pointed the lantern at her. The flame turned blue. Suddenly, cracks spread across the ice beneath her feet. Crack, crack, crack. Elena fell through. The water was freezing, sharp as knives. She screamed underwater, scrambling toward the surface. Then she saw something beneath her, something moving in the black water. Hands. Pale, skeletal hands rising from the depths, reaching, grabbing. Dozens of them. She kicked violently, broke the surface, and pulled herself onto the ice, coughing and choking. The lantern man's voice echoed from the trees. "The forest is hungry." Elena crawled onto the riverbank and forced herself to stand. She ran again, through the bitter cold, through tangled branches, through endless darkness. Hours passed. Her watch now read 3:54 p.m. But the forest still clung to night. Every sound behind her was wrong. Footsteps too close, too soft, too slow. Each time she turned, nothing was there, until she reached her camp again, but everything was different. Her tent was shredded, her backpack torn open, her map burned, her food scattered. But the worst part, there were footprints, bare, human footprints, leading around the tent in circles, dozens of circles, as if someone had walked around it again and again and again. Elena felt her legs go weak. She had to get out. She grabbed a flare, lit it, and waved it wildly, screaming for help. The flare hissed and burned bright red. Then, a hand reached out from the darkness and crushed the flare completely, extinguishing it. Elena screamed and stumbled backward. The lantern man stepped into view, but now he was closer than ever, only a few meters away. His lantern burned with white flame, lighting his face. A face that wasn't a face. It was stretched, flattened, as if pressed against glass. His mouth opened sideways, splitting through his cheeks. He whispered gently, "You're almost mine." Elena turned and ran deeper into the forest. Any direction, any escape, even if she didn't know where she was going. Branches whipped her face. Her clothes tore. Her breath formed clouds of panic. Finally, she saw something. A cabin old, abandoned, but real. She sprinted inside and slammed the door shut. Dark, dusty, rotting. She found a wooden bar and pushed it against the door. Her heartbeat pounded in her throat. She hid behind a broken table, covering her mouth with both shaking hands. Minutes passed. Silence. Then the lantern flame glowed through the cabin window. The humming started again, slow, rhythmic, inevitable. Elena whispered, "Please, someone, please find me." The lantern man walked slowly toward the cabin. His lantern light leaked through the cracks in the walls, sliding across the floor like crawling shadows. He stopped just outside the door. The wood creaked. His voice filled the cabin, deep and echoing, as if coming from the walls themselves. "No one leaves Blackwood without replacing the last one who tried." Then, the door handle moved once, twice. The lantern man whispered, "Come into the dark." The door exploded inward, wood shattering like bones. Elena screamed and grabbed the broken leg of a chair, swinging repeatedly as the lantern man stepped inside. Her strikes passed straight through him. He reached out and wrapped his cold, impossibly long fingers around her wrist. She felt her body grow numb, her vision blur, her strength drain. He lifted the lantern to her face. Inside the lantern, she saw dozens of faces screaming, human faces trapped inside the flame. The lantern man whispered, "You will join them." In one last desperate attempt, Elena reached into her pocket and grabbed her emergency magnesium flare. She struck it. A blinding white light exploded in the cabin. The lantern man recoiled violently, screeching in a distorted, inhuman voice. The cabin walls trembled. Elena ran. Through the back door, through the thick trees, through miles of untouched forest. She didn't stop running until she saw headlights, a road, a car. She collapsed in front of it. A Canadian park ranger jumped out. "Miss, are you okay?" Elena sobbed, barely able to speak. The ranger wrapped her in a blanket and drove her to safety. She told them everything, but they found nothing. No footprints, no lantern, no cabin, no evidence of anything supernatural. Only her shredded tent. But at the forest's edge, where she escaped, they found one thing. A lantern old, rusty, still warm to the touch. Inside the glass, a faint twisted face, screaming. Elena never returned to Canada, but every night when she tries to sleep, she sees a small glow outside her window. A lantern, swinging slowly, back and forth, and a hum in the darkness. Almost mine. Story 6. The Room That Follows You. Yuki Tanaka, a brilliant software engineer from Kyoto, Japan, had spent the last 5 years doing remote work. She was quiet, introverted, and rarely left her apartment in Berlin, Germany. Her life was simple, predictable, until the day she moved. She found a new place to rent, an old apartment on the 9th floor of a narrow, aging building. The owner, an elderly German woman named Frau Linden, gave her a key and simply said, "Do not open the door across from the bedroom." Yuki thought it was weird, but she assumed it was a closet or a maintenance room. The apartment was small and dim, smelling faintly of dust and old wood. There were only 3 rooms, a tiny kitchen, a bedroom, and a living room. But yes, there was another door, directly across from the bedroom, painted black, old brass handle, no keyhole. It felt strange, unwelcoming. She ignored it. For the first week, nothing unusual happened. Then everything changed on the night of June 14th. At 3:18 a.m., Yuki woke up to a sound of soft, rhythmic knocking. Tuck, tuck, tuck. Not from the front door, not from the window, from the black door. She froze in bed. No, impossible. She waited. Again. Tuck, tuck, tuck. 3 knocks, evenly spaced. She clutched the blanket. "Who's there?" she whispered. Silence. She finally gathered the courage to get up, walk to the door, and put her ear against it. Nothing. She backed away, shaking. The knocking didn't happen again. Not that night, but the next morning, Yuki noticed something disturbing. The black door seemed closer, as if the frame had shifted, as if the door had moved slightly toward her bedroom. She pushed the thought aside. Maybe she was imagining it, but by evening she wasn't imagining anything. When she came out of the shower, dripping water onto the wooden floor, she saw a line of wet footprints leading to the black door. They were not hers. Wider, longer, heavier. Yuki's breath hitched. Someone had been in the apartment, or something. She didn't sleep that night. She sat in the living room with the lights on, knees pulled to her chest, listening to every sound the old building made. Then at 4:12 a.m., a whisper slipped through the apartment, a voice, low, hollow, cracked. "Yuki." She jumped to her feet, heart hammering. The voice came again. "Yuki, let me out." She stared at the black door. No, it couldn't be speaking, but the whisper grew louder, filling the apartment. "I have waited so long. Open the door." She backed away until her spine hit the wall. Her hands trembled uncontrollably. "No, you're not real. This isn't real." The whisper laughed, a wet, choking laugh. "You moved into my home." Then the knocking began again. Faster, harder. Tock, 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 tock. Yuki screamed and covered her ears. The floor vibrated. The walls shook. The lights flickered violently. Then, silence. Total, suffocating silence. Yuki didn't sleep again. The next morning, she packed a suitcase. She didn't care about the lease, the money, nothing. She had to leave. When she approached the front door, she froze. The black door was open an inch, just enough to show darkness inside. A cold, damp air seeped out of the crack. Yuki backed away slowly. Her suitcase wheels rattled behind her. She whispered, "I'm leaving. I'm not staying here." The door creaked farther open. A long, pale hand emerged. Fingers too long, bending at unnatural angles, scraping along the floor as it reached toward her. Yuki dropped her suitcase and ran. She sprinted down the hall toward the elevator. She frantically pressed the button. "Hurry! Hurry!" Behind her, something crawled out of the black room. She heard its nails scraping the old wood, slow at first, then faster. She hit the elevator button again and again until her finger hurt. The creature crawled down the hall, dragging itself with heavy, sickening breaths. The elevator dinged. Yuki ran inside and slammed the close door button. As the doors slid shut, she saw an eye peer around the corner, a single, milky, stretched eye, watching her. The doors closed completely. Yuki collapsed to her knees. Her entire body shook. When she reached the ground floor, she sprinted out into the street without looking back. She rented a hotel room for the night. She slept with the TV on, clutching her phone. Around 5:27 a.m., she woke up to a sound. Tuk, tuk, tuk. No, not here. Not in this hotel. But the sound was unmistakable. It came from the closet door. Yuki sat up, trembling uncontrollably. No, no. You can't be here. I left you. A whisper seeped through the closet. Yuki, you can't leave the room. She screamed and ran out of the hotel barefoot. She didn't return for her things. She didn't care. She booked a flight back to Japan that same morning, a 14-hour flight. She believed distance would save her. Thousands of miles, an ocean, a different continent. She slept on the plane and woke up mid-flight to talk, talk, talk. She opened her eyes, horrified. The sound came from the tiny airplane bathroom door. Passengers around her were sleeping peacefully. None of them heard it. She curled into the seat, shaking. The knocking grew louder. Then the whisper came through the bathroom door. Yuki, the room follows who opens the door. She covered her face, silently sobbing. A flight attendant gently touched her shoulder. Miss, are you all right? You look pale. Yuki didn't answer. She knew the truth now. She never opened the black door, but she had heard it. She had listened, acknowledged it. That was enough. The room wasn't a place. It was a thing, an entity, and it attached itself to her. No matter where she went, the black door followed. When she reached Kyoto, her parents hugged her tightly. She didn't tell them anything. She didn't want them involved. They showed her to her childhood bedroom, a peaceful, comforting room she remembered from years ago. Yuki smiled for the first time in days. Maybe she was finally safe. That night she slept deeply, exhausted from running, until 2:44 a.m. Talk, talk, talk. Her eyes snapped open. The sound came from her bedroom closet. Heart pounding, she slowly sat up. No, please no. She got out of bed, shaking violently, and approached the closet. The door was painted white. Peaceful. Normal. But now she noticed something she hadn't before. The bottom edge of the door was turning black, as if something behind it was burning the wood. The blackness spread upward, staining the door like spilled ink. Yuki fell to her knees, sobbing, "Stop. Please stop following me." The whisper seeped through the entire room. I told you, do not open the door across from the bedroom. Her hands covered her mouth as tears streamed down her cheeks. I didn't open it. I didn't open it. The whisper answered, but you wanted to. The closet door slowly opened. Inside was not her closet, not clothes, not shelves, but the same black room from Berlin, the dark, rotting wood, the damp smell, the endless, suffocating darkness. A figure stood inside, tall, emaciated, skin stretched too tight over bone, its head tilted unnaturally, its jaw unhinged and hanging, its fingers scraping along the floor as it stepped forward. It whispered in a soft, rattling voice. "Come home, Yuki," she screamed. Her parents burst into the room, panicked, but by the time they entered, the closet door was normal again, white, clean, closed. Yuki was lying on the floor, shaking uncontrollably. "Baby, what happened?" her mother cried, but Yuki could only whisper, "He found me." That night was the last night Yuki slept in her parents' home. She checked into a hospital for psychiatric care, insisting she was being followed by a door, by a room. Doctors believed she was suffering from trauma. They placed her in a private room, padded and quiet. No closet, no black door, just white walls. They gave her medication to help her sleep. That night, the nurses heard something from her room. At first, it sounded like tapping, then knocking. Tock, tock, tock. A scream followed. When they rushed in, Yuki was gone. Vanished. The only thing left was a black, rotting wooden door standing in the middle of the padded room. When they opened it, the room inside was empty dark. The door slammed shut by itself. When they opened it again, the door was gone. No trace of Yuki was ever found, but patients in the hospital began hearing knocking at night soft. Rhythmic. Tuk, tuk, tuk. Sometimes from their closets, sometimes from drawers, sometimes from behind the walls, and sometimes from a door that wasn't there before a black door. Cold handle, no keyhole, waiting, listening, following.